Good evening, Des Moines. Welcome to the Doc N Lefty program here on webcast1live.com, coming to you every 6:30 to 7:30. You know, I messed that up. Every Tuesday from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. In downtown Des Moines on the Skywalk in the old Kaleidoscope hub. We're close by to it.
Somebody last week said if we were more polished, we'd be a great show.
Somebody did say that. Well, I'm Lefty, as always, bringing you into the show. And over across the table is my partner in crime. He prefers his turkey with no left wings, Dr. Patrick Bertroche. Doc,
hey, how you doing, Blake?
Not too bad, man.
How was your gig last week?
The gig last week was what was last? Oh,
well, apparently it was memorable.
No. Last week it was pretty good. We've got it was 2 weeks ago, actually. I was in Minneapolis last weekend. So.
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, how did you enjoy our about 24 hours of spring? Did you enjoy that?
Oh my gosh.
I can't believe it.
I gotta confess to some people. I came back from Minneapolis. I was we had my mom's mother turned 88 on Saturday. My dad's mother turned 80 on Sunday. And so I was in Minneapolis for another friend's 30th birthday party, and we stopped by my grandma's assisted living center to celebrate her birthday for about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. And then we went downtown Minneapolis to do this 30th birthday party. And I got to tell you, I had a great time. I was the responsible one, but I was so just kind of beat from drive. I had to drive everywhere for everybody.
That's why you were responsible.
Well, of course.
Didn't have any energy to get in trouble.
I was the one that was making sure that nobody else got in trouble, which is, I was in rare form in that regard. No one got in trouble at all.
Good deal.
And so I was so kind of beat down from driving everywhere, going back and forth between Des Moines and Minneapolis, that I took a personal day yesterday and did not enjoy the weather like at all. And felt so bad about leaving all the work for today that, what can I say?
You know, if I'd have known that, I'd have come over and dragged you out.
You probably should have.
I should have.
I could have ridden on one of your motorcycles and been, comfy cozy and been a fantastic time. Well, anyway, buddy, we got two guests. This is
we have
two special guests. This is a double feature. We have doubled our guest load by 200%. We never ever have more than one person at a time because honestly, if more than one person at a time knew us or liked us at all, we would have doubled our friend load by 200% as well.
Plus, if you get too many brain cells and intelligence in the room, we get outclassed.
Hey, we can't have that. We're the money maker. Well, I shouldn't say money maker, but anyway. Anyway, we've got Julie Randa with us and Sid Cohen, and they are here to kind of help us put a bow on the 3-week series of DHS Children Families in Iowa, not to be confused with Children's Families of Iowa, the great field services resource provider network, but to talk about some of their experiences and some of the advocacy and the work they do with respect to women, domestic abuse, children, families, and talk about share some of their own personal experiences with the department. Julie is here. Julie, so you are with what agency? Well, with what organization?
I am with Iowa Family Rights here in Des Moines.
And you consider both with Iowa Family Rights, correct?
Sid is on the left, Julie's on the right.
Okay.
Correct.
So Iowa Family Rights. Well, before we get into that, Julie, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your personal story, your background, and then Sid, excuse me. Then Sid will
Ladies,
get into
you have to get right up close to the mic. Pull it right into you.
So Julie, tell us a little about yourself. What's your biography?
Okay, well, I am a Southside full-blooded Italian Catholic girl raised here in Des Moines, Iowa, and I have a grandmother that's 95.
Oh my!
So she still lives in her own home, and I've raised my kids by myself, put myself through school. I'm an accountant. I have a bachelor's degree, and worked for my grandfather and my father for a very long time. We had Miller Beer. We were the beer distributorship here in Des Moines. And I have two children. Tony, he's 33. My daughter, Katie, is 23. And my daughter in 2010 had a baby. And shortly after the baby was born, my daughter went over to the paternal grandmother's home. The father had to go away to prison to do about a year. And so the paternal grandmother was helping out a little bit with babysitting and such. And she went over to see if the paternal grandmother would watch the baby. And the police were called on her. And she was charged with burglary, a house that she had been walking into for a good year, stayed there, had some things there. The baby had things there. She drove home, and she got actually arrested at my home. And she called and she said, I'm going to be arrested. They called the police on me when I came over that day. So I went running home, and I called my father, and he was closer. He went running over to my house, and they waited for somebody to get there, my father or I, so that the baby would, be okay. He was about 6 months old at the time, and they hauled her off to jail. She was there for about 42 days. We got it down to trespassing. They tried to say that she broke down their front door, jam and all, broke the lock. She's just a little bitty thing, so I knew that was not possible. One of the residents of the home said that door had been broken by his older brother, but her being in jail put the baby into the china. They chinaed the baby. They would not allow me to keep him in my home. They took him, and actually my father and I had to turn him over to DHS. We had a worker call the day she was arrested and said, you turn him over or else. So I called an attorney, and he said, go ahead and turn the baby over. We'll get him back for you. And I did as I was told. And the DHS worker called back and said, why did you sick this attorney on me?
The worker called personally to complain about having an attorney involved?
That I called the attorney, yes. So in the parking lot of DHS was the paternal grandmother.
Do we need to take a break and let Lefty calm down over there? So, because, I hear stories. I mean, honest, not to interrupt Julie, but honest to goodness, I hear stories like this all the time.
Well, we're coming up on a break, so maybe that's not a bad idea. Right. We'll talk about Sid and get back to Julie's story, because I'm riveted by what you're telling us, Julie, and then we'll get kind of Sid's background and then talk about your organization. Okay. But anybody who calls to complain to anybody else, and I'll leave, before we go to the break, I'll leave this thought on the table. Anybody who calls to complain about a lawyer calling them needs to have their head examined. That's all I have to say. Absolutely.
Now, I try to avoid having lawyers call me all the time, and that includes my two brothers.
That's true.
And my dad.
Yeah.
But we're going to be back right after the break. Did you know we have a Facebook and Twitter now? Doc and Lefty out there?
I did. I've been to both, and they're fantastic.
Really?
Yes.
Really? Terrific. Anyway, don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. You're listening to Doc and Lefty. We have two very special guests here today, Sid Keene and Julie Randa, who are part of Iowa Family Rights and Protest DHS on Facebook. And we'll be back right after break. Thanks for joining us today.
Petrosh & Associates, how can I help you?
Petrosh & Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Petrosh, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere.
All across America, there are countless numbers of people struggling with addiction and other life-controlling issues. Probably someone you know and love. There is a way out. There is hope. Transformations Treatment Center in Delray Beach, Florida, has a unique approach to substance abuse treatment. Call now and ask about our Guaranteed Success program, or log on to transformationstreatment.com. Transformations. Change your life. Change your relationships. Transform your world.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. This is Lefty with Doc and Lefty. We're here with Julie Randa and Sid Keene, two members of Iowa Family Rights. They also are members of or organizers of the Protest DHS Facebook page. We were put in contact with them by one of the directors of, I believe it was the Protest, it was Iowa Family Rights, Grace Cervantes, I believe,
yes,
hooked us up with these two.
Thank you, Grace.
Fine women, and we're talking about we brought some more people in. Just to kind of give a little bit of context, a little bit of background on why these two guests are here. We did a show about some personal experience with the DHS that got so much response from just kind of your garden variety viewer.
We got calls from everywhere.
Internationally, even.
We did. I actually got a Skype call from a friend of mine and said things really can't be that bad there. Because it's not even that bad here, and I think I think she was in Istanbul at the time.
Yeah.
Their 9 things aren't even that bad in Istanbul.
And we also want to point out that we've never, formally reached out to DHS or had DHS represented on the show. They circle the wagons, but they also really only go on the Iowa Public Radio stuff too. So maybe if I was able to use some connections to get somebody on to talk about the department a little bit, we could. But anyway, so we're presenting one side of things, and that's fine with me because I see this kind of stuff all the time. Doc sees it all the time. So Sid, I understand that your story is similar in a lot of ways to Julie's here, but why don't you tell us a little about your background and what brings you to the studio today?
Sure. Well, I was in a domestic violence relationship for 23 years. I have 3 children. I was the primary caregiver for our children. And, one day I just had enough, and he promised me that he would get even with me. Mm-hmm. And his vengeance went through DHS, and I had false allegations against me for domestic violence on my children, child abuse and child neglect. So, I'm thinking that the judicial system would take care of it. I'm going to, get a lawyer. I'm going to go to the judge. She'll surely see that for, 14 years of these children's lives that I was the one taking care of them, and that these allegations were false. And, he was a convicted abuser, spent time in jail. So, surely they wouldn't put my children with the abuser. And DHS was involved, and, social worker after social worker wrote false allegations, and my court-appointed attorney let it go by. We'll discuss it. We'll discuss it. Mm-hmm. Once you're in the courtroom, family court is not like what you see on TV or what you learn in school. Family court is its own thing, and it was really disheartening and utterly horrific, the things that happened in court. I suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder from the abuse. I also suffer from legal abuse. I was 18 court dates, 2 ex parte hearings. The whole experience is so horrific. I also, if I'm under traumatic experiences with my ex or with the GAL, I disassociate. Mm-hmm. So, after seeing 3 actual doctors, shrinks, they're like, no, you're normal. There's lots of people that come back from the war. They suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. There is no reason for you not to have your children. So my case went all the way to the Supreme Court, but once the papers are written and in black and white, it
looks like a different thing.
Yeah.
Sure.
So you don't get to.
So Julie, we were talking about some of the specifics of your particular case, and so I'll get back to you in a second, but so you have now, just to kind of talk, we're throwing a lot of acronyms around and the process. What we're talking about primarily right now is child need assistance cases. And a child need assistance case is basically the Department of Human Services steps in and says judicial aid is required to protect this child from what's called adjudicatory harm. Adjudicatory harm can be several different things: drug abuse by a parent, neglect by a parent, leaving the child with somebody who's not safe. There's a whole laundry list of code sections like A through N or O, I believe, that a parent can be accused of. And what I have noticed in the short few years that I've been doing, and I've done several of these cases now, is that almost never are the adjudicatory hearing, that first adjudication hearing, almost never are they contested. Has that been, Julie, is that your experience? Did your daughter stipulate to the allegations in her China?
You know what? I don't recall off the top of my head. This was in 2010. Mm-hmm. I would like to think that yes, that's what happened.
That she admitted to that.
No, she just went to jail on what ended up to be a trespassing charge.
Right. Well, what I mean specifically is that so you don't have either parent to take care of a child, and so the state will come in and say, well, this child needs assistance, and the specific allegations they would say is, well, mom's in jail and dad's in prison. Yeah. And I obviously, because the facts are the facts, you probably had to stipulate to that. Sid, did you stipulate to the allegations in your China?
You know, it happened so fast. I did, under my lawyer's advice, sign the papers for the China. And I wished that I trusted my attorney that they knew what was best. I don't know. After looking at all of the cases, at the time, I believe it was last year, there were 78 cases that went through that up on appeals. Only one of those cases got overturned. So, you know, there's a recipe that they follow that it's pretty much set, and you know, once they take them, they're gone.
Well, and not that I'm in the habit of defending lawyers, because I'm not, but I will tell you, in this process, lawyers look at the law and they have to follow the law. There are officers of the court, isn't that what you get?
That is what they say, yes.
And so they're doing what they have to do, and they're advising you the best way they can under the law. The problem is, and we hit this last week. Wasn't it last week?
Yeah.
Where you have social workers barely out of college overruling lawyers, doctors.
Exactly.
You know, just about everybody. And I have seen firsthand lies, outright lies by these people, writing it down in front of me to cover their hind ends because they screwed something up. I mean, the DHS, the Iowa DHS, is rife with horror stories. The only place I've ever been where it's been worse than Iowa was Florida. And those guys are in a mess. So not to defend lawyers, and I'm sorry this happened to both of you, but they're required to give you the best advice they can based on the law. And most of the time, these lawyers actually seem shocked when they're in my office, because I've already said, DHS is great about setting up an appointment, bringing everybody in, and then sticking a shaft to the family. And the family's lawyers always look dumbstruck, like, how can this happen? It's really like trying to deal with the KGB or the CIA, right? They'll do all kinds of things to make sure, you know, they get ahead. And that's really the story I hear from Sid and Julie.
So Julie, after you turned your grandchild over to DHS and you hired a lawyer, right? You called a lawyer for some advice, and he said, "We'll get the child back," which now you know is not as easy as it sounds. And so representing that to you is probably an error. But did you then get involved in the case in a formal way?
I did. You know, my daughter was in jail, and the DHS worker actually went to jail and made her sign temporary custody over. So my daughter signed a piece of paper without legal counsel or knowing really probably what she was doing, and signed that piece of paper. And then after 42 days when she got out, and you know, you only have 6 months on a child.
On a baby, yeah.
A baby. So then she had, you know, basically 4.5 months to try and get her baby back. And while she was trying to get her baby back, the DHS worker, because now my daughter's on probation.
Right.
At that time, the DHS worker and the probation officer were friends. So together, there were always warrants out for my daughter's arrest, so that every time she had to go to baby court, she sometimes was coming from jail. They charged her with harassment in the 1st degree, and then because she had a harassment charge, it was a probation violation. So we subpoenaed her records, and we had to wait for her records to come, and it turns out that she had not harassed either one of the workers. So the state dropped the case.
The alleged victim of the harassment was one of the DHS, the social worker?
Two of the DHS workers.
Wow.
Then they decided that they were afraid of my daughter, so they put a no contact order on her. So the very two people that are supposed to be helping my daughter preserve her family have now a no contact order on her.
Right.
Absolutely.
So what were their specific concerns?
We got to take a break here. We have Julie Randa and Sid Keene in today. Sid was kind enough to bring some pretty scrumptious apple.
Oh man,
crisp.
You know, I want it.
That's my favorite stuff.
The only thing that could have made me happier than seeing apple crisp on the table was like a big warm apple pie. That's the only thing I like better than apple crisp. I'm an apple guy. I guess I don't know. It's the only way that they could keep me in apples back when I was a kid.
Sid has a pretty extensive background in cooking.
That
and
is
being
true.
A chef, because I was looking up your resume and all that, and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. So we got to eat some of that before.
We did.
And it does contain sugar, so if I suddenly drop over dead or black out or something, you'll know what happened.
Well, it
was scrumptious, well worth it.
That's okay. I've got power of attorney, so.
Yes, you do. So we want to, can we put up her website there, Frank? She's got a catering business, Catering by Sid, CYD. It's like Il Cid, spelled the old-fashioned way. If anybody remembers the movie with, what was it, Charlton Heston?
I believe so.
Yeah. So anyway, we want to thank her for coming on. We're going to be back right after break after we get a word in from our sponsors.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit! You're our hero!
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. This is Doc N Lefty, and we breezed through the first half hour, and so we're going to have to speed things up, and I do apologize. And late, we had our special guests, Julie Randa and Sid Keene, here with us to talk about some of the DHS war stories that are they're popping up a lot. They're kind of popping up out of the woodwork, especially, I mean, this is not a new problem, but especially recently with the Iowa Juvenile Home being closed down and people kind of feeling a little bit more, I don't know what the right word is, but it's more front of mind now. I mean, because it's really easy to ignore things like this when you're not involved in them. And I know, ladies, you've been dealing with this very, very personal stuff, and having your family is torn apart by allegations and folks in the department. So, Sid, we were talking during the break, and the result of your child need assistance actions that your parental rights were terminated.
Correct.
And the kids are now where?
With the abusive father.
With the father. Okay. And so. And that went on for a full year, I'd assume.
I was in court legal battle for 3.5 years.
Okay, so even so, appeals and everything else.
Correct.
And you said that your case went up to the Iowa Supreme Court. Did they actually did they take it up on review, or did they just kind of say now that the Court of Appeals did a good enough job?
They just brushed it off.
They ignored it. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, and I don't want to, we're running short on time, and so I want to get to the real meat of the show and why you guys are both here. I mean, we could talk for hours and hours about your individual stories, and I know that we kind of launched that part of the show first, but so you're here as representatives of Iowa Family Rights, and why don't you tell us a little bit about that organization and its mission?
Sure. When I was going through all of this, I really felt like I was on an island, and how could this be happening to me? They totally isolate you. They, put gag orders on you. They, do ex parte hearings. They, put no contact orders. So I really felt alone. And so I was really reaching out to people here in Iowa and frankly all over the world to, is this just me? And I was really shocked to learn that there are groups here in the Des Moines area that have been down the same paths that we have. Mm-hmm. And, I would just like to put the word out that having your parental rights terminated is pretty devastating. And I'm not a drug user. I'm, a citizen. I have to say that I pay taxes, and it's a business. And so a nonprofit group was formed. There's actually two of them, Protest Iowa DHS and also Iowa Family Rights. And, you can go on Facebook and, become a member. And it's a great way to, find out, how you deal with this. It's horrific. It is the most devastating. Words can't even describe taking a mother's babies away from her is so against nature. And how this can happen in the United States is just unconscionable. And the people that are doing it, things need to change. And so we're in the process of pushing through some laws. There's a law that's going to be coming in on the floor for your state representatives and senators to vote on tomorrow or Friday. Do you want me to say the?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, HF 2421, and it would be so that the children would go to a guardian rather than being put up into a child in need of assistance. And so you would really have that family stay intact rather than being pushed through the process of.
I'm sorry to interrupt, because I think Jeannie mentioned that too when she was here. What are the specific features of the bill that, because I understand a guardianship it goes through the probate process. It's a district court issue, and parents can challenge those if the parents are around, because a guardianship is for if there are no parents really. But and in China is something completely different. So what are the features, and how are those two concepts interrelate?
Julie, I'll let you.
Yeah.
Well, with the guardianship, like you said, then that baby stays within the family, and the family is, takes care of that child, making sure that it has what it's needed. When the child is Chined, then it's put into the system, and usually for the next 18 years. Then we have the federal funds that are needed. Usually those families that take the children or foster care, or like Sid said, not an appropriate place at all, low income, poverty, low income families. And then that child will need all of the different programs. The WIC, food stamps, Title 19, health insurance, and that keeps that child in the system for 18 years.
Sure. Now, what now is this a bill to replace the child in need of assistance action altogether? Because it sounds like if you have a situation where you have, say you've got a son-in-law and a daughter, they've got a couple of kids, and they're out, using meth, they're doing, which I think we at all this table can agree that methamphetamine use in a family is very destructive, can be very, very volatile and not good for kids. They're severe drug abusers. That's where China comes in. That's where the Child in Need Assistance Program comes in. Are you suggesting that rather than having an adjudication, that those children are placed in a formal guardianship with a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle?
That is correct. Like in my case, my grandchildren could have just stayed with me while the father was in prison, and my daughter went off and did her jail for 42 days and then was back home again. I was financially, physically, emotionally well prepared to take care of my grandchildren. And
I gotta say, and this is just me speaking from my experience, and not in an attempt to defend any of the actions that were taken, against you or on your behalf in your respective cases, but it's my experience that relative placements, whether with a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle or a cousin, are always preferred over foster care. That's been my personal experience, and I'm curious to know, did they give you a reason? Did they give you any sort of justification for just putting your daughter's children with a foster family rather than
They actually put my daughter's children with the paternal grandmother. But the paternal grandmother and her family have ongoing criminal and drug history.
Okay.
She, in fact, has 2 children in prison as we speak.
Mm-hmm.
The oldest one was arrested December 2010 for selling drugs out of the house.
Sure.
Okay, I don't have anybody in prison or jail or any, drug or criminal history going on in my family. I just don't understand why my children, my grandchildren went to the paternal family, and then they not only went to the paternal family, but they were separated into different pieces of the paternal family.
And
they're not even being raised together. When I would have raised them together, they would have grown up as brothers in my home.
And that could be a very significant issue as well. Sid, so it sounds like this legislation is designed to completely replace the child abuse assistance rubric, wholesale. Would there still be a provision under this plan to preserve the termination of parental rights component that comes in at the tail end?
I'm not. Some of our other members did some work on this bill. I'm not totally familiar with it, but I would think that if the family has guardianship of that child, then that child's needs are being met, and there shouldn't be any other court interference. And
I think to the whole point, there's no common sense with DHS. I mean,
right.
if you look at someone who has a clean record, was never charged with anything, has an income to pay for health insurance and take care of the children, it just doesn't make sense to turn around and give the child to someone who isn't that close to the child, who has a criminal record. I don't. They're so in a hurry to terminate and get the child put into a China so that the child qualifies for a guardian ad litem, so the child qualifies for a therapist. I mean, and the therapist and the guardian ad litem that are doing supposedly helping the child, they're not people that you would like.
Why do you think they railroad that?
Well, I think it's the money side of it.
Right, because you mentioned in here the Title IV federal funding.
Correct.
And that's something sponsored by, my good friend, Chuck Grassley, not necessarily Lefty's good friend. And it had bipartisan support, and I was just rereading here what it does. And the goal of it is to try to reunify families.
That's not what it's
doing. So in other words, it's a bill that's been written, but isn't doing what it's supposed to.
No, there's some really dishonest people that are milking the system and
imagine that.
Well,
milking a government subsidy.
Well, but
sacrificing children.
Sure, a subsidy to department agencies, though, right?
Well, the way I read this, and I can be completely wrong, it's the money follows the child.
Correct.
Yes.
Yep. Till they're 18 or.
And so if you can get them out into a foster family, it appears that the money is the same whether they go to a relative or to a foster family. So I guess I'm not, the truth is when I'm looking at this, for our listeners out there who may not understand, what's the deal about if the money follows the child?
Well, for instance,
then how does DHS benefit from not placing them with the relatives? Because DHS isn't going to get any more or less money.
Well, we have another members of our group, and they wanted to adopt their grandson, and DHS told them that they had to take all of these programs, and if they were going to adopt their grandson, and he already lived in their home. He had lived there for 4.5 years. He already had their room there. They were already paying for his daycare. They were basically like his kind of surrogate mom and dad. And DHS said, you will take our programs if you want your grandson. And they didn't need to take the programs. They didn't need the money. They didn't need those resources. They were fine to take care of their grandchild on their own.
So in other words, if they didn't take what DHS was offering them, then they'd take the child. Because I'm looking right here, it says child must have been eligible to receive the 4E foster care payments. It must return home and adoption must be ruled out. The child must have a strong bond with the caregiver, and the relative must be committed to permanently caring for the child. Youth 14 or older must be consulted. So I guess I'm back to, I'm not quite sure what, well, I'm back to a station break. Sorry, we ran just a hair long. I wasn't paying attention. It happens sometimes. So don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We'll be back right after break with Julie Randa and Sid Keen. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
All across America, there are countless numbers of people struggling with addiction and other life-controlling issues. Probably someone you know and love. There is a way out. There is hope. Transformations Treatment Center in Delray Beach, Florida, has a unique approach to substance abuse treatment. Call now and ask about our Guaranteed Success program or log on to transformationstreatment.com. Transformations. Change your life. Change your relationships. Transform your world.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. We're here with Sid Kane and Julie Randa, our special guest, to talk about their experiences with the Department of Human Services and their advocacy through Iowa Family Rights. That's a nonprofit group, and then the Facebook group Protest Iowa DHS. Now, or something along those. Protest DHS Iowa, or Iowa DHS. I think it's Protest Iowa DHS. Correct. So now. It sounds like you've got, one bill. Who sponsored the House bill?
Janet Peterson.
Janet Peterson did, and she is a representative from the Des Moines area, or?
You know what? I'm sorry, I'm not exactly positive.
That's okay.
But it's HF 2421, right?
Yes.
Sure. And so if you're out there and you are you listen to the program and you have different viewpoints, you can contact the two groups that we talked about, Iowa Family Rights and Protest DHS Iowa. If you got some supporting views, or if you are wanting to get in touch about more specific instances of this legislation, you can look up the House file bill that is being voted on this week. Contact Janet Peterson.
Yep, HF 2421,
and get involved that way, because honestly, there are a lot of problems with the Department of Human Services. There are a lot of problems with the particular child need assistance system the way that it is. I spent 45 minutes talking to a colleague, another parents lawyer, about a case that we're working on, where we figured out what we needed to do with the case in about 10 minutes. The two lawyers did, and then spent the next 35 minutes complaining about the worker, complaining about the judge, although we like the judge a lot, complaining about the system, basically just complaining about the whole situation. And really, my view is that the only change is going to come legislatively, because so much of the problems lie with how much discretion each individual social worker has because of the code and with each individual judge. Has that been your experience? Did you feel, and Sid, I'll start with you, did you feel that the social worker had too much sort of pull in your particular case?
The social workers totally hold all the cards. Mm-hmm. And again, these are people coming into your home and, judging you. They're not trained. I was coming out of 23 years of domestic violence, and, here the social worker and my ex are, talking it up. Mm-hmm. They didn't understand, I guess. So for my view, I would like to see, and I'm going to be pushing for legislation for the social workers to have more training in domestic violence. I feel that that's, really key, that the social workers just are not trained, right, not ready.
During the break, because we've talked about the social workers, mm-hmm, and how much power they have and how poorly, mm-hmm, trained they really are. And the last thing about that is there's just not enough of them. there are so many chiefs and hardly any Indians over at DHS, which is a major problem. I mean, that's directly on Charles Palmer's shoulders. Now, one of the things I want to get back to is the Title IV-E federal funding. I'm still not quite sure how, because I just got done reading this again to make sure I was correct. So what you're telling me is DHS is forcing families into social programs that they don't need.
Correct.
And so I just got done reading this, that is a violation of federal law. And is that the position you two are taking as far as the Title IV-E funds? That they're violating federal law?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And we have enough DHS workers.
You think so?
We have enough.
I think the DHS workers, there's a lot of them. And I think that if they were trained well enough, their workload wouldn't be as high. Yeah. I think that, for all of the time that they spent on me, for the time that they spent on my case and for the number of workers, it wasn't uncommon for at least 12 DHS workers to be in a courtroom with me. I had 18 court hearings and 2 ex parte hearings. So for me, I feel like the social workers are not using their time correctly. And, again, they're not trained.
All right. The other thing here is that DHS says that about a quarter of Iowa's children are placed in relative care. But you're saying it's only about 8%. And that statistic came from North American Council on Adoptable Children in 2011. Why is there such a discrepancy between the two? Do you have any idea?
Well, again, I think it goes back to the money side of it.
Why would DHS report something that was false? That could be easily proven otherwise. So, that's a real issue. It's not like they reported 26% and NCAC reported 24.
Well, and another thing is that in Sid's case, her children did go to the abusive father. In my situation, my grandkids did go to the paternal family.
So it may be the way that they're structuring the study then, or the way they're...
That could be.
All right. Well, that makes a lot more sense. Now, HF 2421 is basically, instead of doing a child in need of assistance where they're just yanked out of the home, placed with strangers and everything else, because I can tell you working in the system that these kids come in, and I've been the physician when kids have come in with 20 medications, and that's not an exaggeration. And all I did was over a period of time stop the medications. It'll take a year or two to get people off this. Mm-hmm. And the entire time they're doing well because they've been reunited with people they're at least familiar with. So I understand that. What do you think the guardianship instead of a child in need of assistance, what do you think that will be? Because guardianship could still be given to a stranger. From what I understand and from what I've read of this bill. So what's going to prevent that from continuing to happen?
That's a very good question. And Sid and I weren't exactly in on the bill when it was written by some of our members of Iowa Family Rights. So I don't know that her and I are the best to talk about that right now.
Okay.
Well, I think that the guardianship, if you're involved in this, you really do have your relatives around you. Your relatives really do want to keep the family intact. They don't want their grandchildren, their cousin, and they certainly don't want their kids or family member to go to the abuser or the drug addict. I don't know. It takes away the whole. You break up a child from its family, and you've lost a generation of.
Yeah. That's true.
That is true. One quick question, because we're coming up on another break, but I wanted to get both your perspectives on this, because we've talked a lot about DHS. We've talked a lot about the structure.
Well, hold on. Save that question for after break, because I got one last follow up. Then we'll hit a break.
Go ahead.
Now Now, if the only family member that's left that could take this child is a convicted drug user, do you advocate for that child to go there, to that family? Or would you say, well, maybe in that case, they need to go someplace else?
I guess I'm a little bit confused because I thought the whole point of DHS getting involved was to help the family to reunify. Mm-hmm. That was the number one goal. So if they have, of a parent that is addicted to drugs, if she goes through rehab, if she's not an alcoholic, then I thought that's why DHS was supposed to be.
But what if they don't? What if they do go through rehab and then drop dirty?
Then I really think that the child should go with another family member.
All right. Well,
that doesn't have a criminal record.
I want to thank both Julie Randa and Sid Keen for showing up today and discussing DHS. We'll be back after break. We'll have Lefty ask them some questions that are burning a hole in his pocket. Apparently, love it. And speaking of love, Sid brought in some delicious apple crisp, man, and I cannot stop thinking about it. In fact, I think I'm going to bust out of here at the break and see how much of that I can eat before you get there.
I got to tell you, looking as slim and sexy as you have been, I don't need it. So you probably need to.
I told Sid that she needed to bring something because you're looking a little scrawny lately.
It's one of those situations where I couldn't deal with the. We'll get to that at the break.
We'll do. Thanks for tuning in. By the way, cateringbysid.com, CYD. So far, man, she's doing great. We'll be back right after the break. You're listening to Doc and Lefty here every Tuesday from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m.
Bertroche and Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. We are proud to work with military personnel and their families. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Bertroche, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere. Our licensed mental health therapists provide individual counseling to children, adolescents, and adults, including couples and marital counseling. Visit our website at bertrocheandassociates.com for more information or call 515-334-9484. Our offices are located at 5525 Meredith Drive in Des Moines, just east of Skate North off Merle Hay Road. Isn't it time to talk to someone? Take care of yourself and your family. Contact Bertroche and Associates.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. When we have great guests, Doc, it is just it makes
the hour go quick.
It makes
us want to go into a second one, doesn't it?
It really does. I feel like we've got more than enough material just with Sid Kane and Julie Randa to fill up 4 hours.
Great guests.
That's true. And if you want to get in touch with them, you can get in touch with them and with other people who like them and who've gone through similar experiences as them by going to their organization, Iowa Family Rights, and the Facebook page Protest IODHS, and you can find links to that, or at least more information to those on our Facebook page, Doc and Lefty, on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter, and I'm sure we'll be tweeting links out to their respective websites that they have. But ladies, we talked a lot about the system. We talked a lot about DHS, the bureaucracy there, some of the motivations for why we think that they like to do what they do. And some of the failings in the training. And the one thing that is almost never ever talked about, which I personally don't happen to mind from a professional standpoint, but we should talk about it quick here in this last segment. What do you think is the lawyers and the judges, the legal officers involved in these cases? Because these DHS workers, they know what DHS wants. These social workers, they know what how to work within their system, but they don't know the law necessarily, or the experienced ones do. But it's the lawyers and the judges that really can make a difference. And you suggest that you had a disappointing experience with some of the legal folks that you worked with. What specifically for lawyers? Like, get on the lawyers a little bit. What could we as parents, lawyers, be doing differently to help folks in similar situations prevent the family from being completely dissolved?
I don't know that there is anything that you can do, because I had several lawyers, several. And
that's never a good sign, Julie. I'm just going to tell you. Usually, if you're happy with one, you stick with one.
I had to get my daughter a lawyer. I had to get myself a lawyer. And then DHS put denial of critical care on me so that I wasn't an option to take my grandchildren, defined as other. Of course, you know, medical shelter, food, all of that. I fit into the other. So, yes, I had quite a few lawyers. But when the DHS lawyer is bent on doing his job for the DHS, because I even filed a motion to intervene, and I went up and shook the DHS lawyer's hand to let him know I'm in the game now.
Yeah.
He went behind my lawyer, my back, and went to the new judge. New judge came in, didn't know the case very well. She had granted me my motion to be heard, and he went to the lawyer couple weeks later and had her sign the adoption paper and cancel my hearing. And then I never found out until my hearing was just about ready to be scheduled.
So Sid,
ready to be heard.
What do you think, Julie? I tend to agree that unless the law has changed itself, lawyers are kind of, as a parent's lawyer, I'm constantly running up against brick walls about things that I can do. Usually there's a lot of this from me. There's a lot of, okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And that, part of that is because I'm kind of a dumb guy, but also part of it is because there's not a whole lot for me to say, not a whole lot of advocacy. What advice could you give lawyers and judges in this situation who, I'm not getting out of the juvenile game because I think it's too important, but a lot of lawyers are. The guy that I talked to for 45 minutes today he's so dissatisfied, he's so disheartened that he might just give that practice up altogether because he's not getting anywhere. So what kind of advice could you give for a guy like me to make me a better advocate for parents?
Sure. Well, for me, I came out of a domestic violence 23. I would recommend training in domestic violence, recognizing what are the signs. And I really feel like if you had more training and you were a lawyer and I came into your office, you would be aware of what the signs were that I was dealing with. As far as my court-appointed lawyer, if she were running her practice just on herself, I don't know if she would get any business. She works closely with DHS. She knows exactly what she was doing. She did the bare minimum. That's all her clients were exactly like me.
All right. Yeah. We have a phone call. Amazing.
We do. We get exactly one phone call a quarter, so it's about time.
Let me plug in.
So
we're ready to go. Hello.
Hey, Pat. This is your brother Joe.
Oh, hey, brother Joe. At least we got one listener this week.
Hey, that's okay.
We'll take them.
Well, I believe that your guest hit it somewhat on the head. Several fold issues arise in these DHS proceedings. One, I would agree that a lot of these court-appointed attorneys are all chummy with the DHS workers and the county attorney's office. And that's just the nature of the beast. They're down at the courthouse. They're commiserating all the time together. And that's the big issue that I see. Number two, most of the people that are involved in these DHS proceedings, unfortunately, are lower economic status individuals and don't have the money to retain private counsel. I hate to tell you this, but I think Lefty would tell you money does talk in the legal system.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and I was involved in a case with DHS. Again, the kid's attorney, the mother's attorney, were all good buddies. They all socialized together. They office near each other. And we had 6 filings of domestic or DHS founded abuse reports within about 2 months. And then we ended up with a total of 9, all of which were appealed, all of which were overturned with no findings at all. The point was that my client retained me as private counsel, private pay, and unlike a court-appointed attorney, we had the therapist that was involved, and she had her own agenda. We had to do some investigation. We found out she, in fact, had made similar allegations against one of her ex-husbands. And frankly, to be honest with you, she was nuttier than a fruitcake. And to be honest with you, this lady has referred a lot of clients to me because in the hearings we had, it was not a pleasant time for her. But I'm not saying I'm a great attorney, but the difference between me and somebody getting $50 an hour or whatever they're getting paid is that my client had the funds and he had the resources to take these guys on. And it's like the old adage, you know, you can't take a gun or a knife to a gunfight. Well, that's kind of the way it is. Sometimes you're taking a pillow to a gunfight with some of these DHS workers and court-appointed attorneys.
So, Joe, would
believe,
you? Oh, I was just going to go ahead, Joe.
There are a lot of great court-appointed attorneys. Don't get me wrong, but I will tell you that at the Lynn County Juvenile Center, we have a complete separate building for the juvenile court cases. All you have to do is go there some morning, and you'll see all of these guys chumming around. Yep. And they are all in bed together. Yep. I remember during this particular case I was telling you about, Judge Flaherty, who's been a friend of mine for 30 years, when we had the meeting chamber, she goes, "Joe, I hear you're just not playing nice out there."
Sure.
Well,
so Joe, what would you
got to stir the pot?
What would you give court-appointed lawyers or other lawyers out there that that want to be a part of these cases because they think it's important? What kind of advice could you give them to kind of maybe fight harder for the parents?
Well, you know, as far as that goes, you know, obviously if you're doing this as a young lawyer, you're doing it for the experience. Mm-hmm. But my biggest advice would be do not be afraid to make waves.
Okay.
And you're not making much money at it, so you might as well make it a cause. And if you see that this is somebody that is getting mistreated by the system, you can't just let it go by. You can't sit by silently and just nod your head, because that will get you nowhere. And that means taking the depositions of the DHS workers or anything else you've got to do.
Sure. But Sid, you wanted to chime in?
I think the most important thing, looking back on it, that the question that I didn't ask my court-appointed attorney is, how many of these cases have you won? After looking at it, she didn't win one case, and I'd been with her for years. It was extremely disappointing. And the other thing is, the guardian ad litem should be required to speak to both parents, not just to the side of who she wants to win.
No, I want to say thank you to my brother Joe calling in. Don't sell yourself short, Joe. I think you're a pretty good attorney. There's another attorney that was pretty wise. He told me one day, Pat, no cash, no justice. And that's really how our system works. We have another caller, Grace Cervantes, said she is on a phone now. And, we've exceeded our allotment for the year of call-ins.
Yep. No more calls for the rest of the year.
Rest of the year. So Frank, can you put Grace on for us? Hello, Grace. You're on the air.
Hi, Doc. Hi, Lefty.
How's it going?
Good. Thanks for having us on.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
We're excited to reach people who need support dealing with the Department of Human Services and child in need of assistance cases. And they can access our Gmail account. It's Iowa Family Rights, all one word, at gmail.com.
Iowa Family Rights at gmail.com is that's a general mailbox to email questions to, or email out, like how to get involved, how to get in touch?
Yes.
Are you guys taking donations?
No, actually, I'm in the process of writing some grants for a new nonprofit.
Okay. So, great. You had anything else on your mind, Grace?
No, I just wanted to give our contact information in case we can assist anyone who's going through
terrific, because we got it up on my Facebook page. Our super stud social media chick is getting busy, and she's going to put it up on Doc N Lefty and Twitter.
Oh, man.
I bet you she's already got it in there. She's much more better. Now, I'm going to say we have to go now. I want to say thank you to Grace
thank you for calling,
for contacting us
and
getting us in contact with these great guests today. So thank you for calling in. We want to thank Julie Randa and Sid Keene for coming on the show, telling us their story, explaining to us what needs to happen. I think one of the ideas that's good is have this organization sit down with the head of DHS, at least on a quarterly basis, and kind of monitor the system. again, Sid brought us in some wonderful apple crisp. It's all gone, Lefty. I got her down.
You took care of it?
Oh yeah, Frank was rolling around in it before I got there.
Man,
he does. You don't even know what I have to do to get it.
It's a good thing that I've got your insulin shots in my briefcase.
Yes, that's right. So it's cateringbysid.com. Give her a holler. We will be back next week. We have U.S. congressional candidate Joe Grandinette, who's agreed to come on.
Oh man!
So we're gonna promote that. You got any questions for Joe? Then send us an email, whatever it is. We want to thank everybody for tuning in, calling in. We'll be back next week.
Hey, thank you, Sid.
Thank you for
you,
having
Julie.
us.
Thank you so much. Again, Facebook, Twitter, Doc N Lefty, Facebook, DocNLefty.com. It's under construction. The whole thing is going a complete revamp, folks. So we're coming to you here in the next couple of weeks with a whole new format. So we appreciate you for listening.
Oh yeah,
thank you, Ryan, and thank you to our guests.
All right,
we're out.
Thank you.
And I love these guys, both of them.
Love these guys. Get over here. Love both of them.